I'm Arshi. I'm part of Cambridge University Engineering Society, part of the committee. We hope you've had a good half term so far, and thank you for signing up for Access Week. At Cambridge University Engineering Society, we've run this event for the past few years now, and we found that a lot of prospective students like to hear about the experiences of current students and get advice firsthand. And we'd also like to use Access Week to kind of highlight that students from all sorts of backgrounds are welcome to study engineering at Cambridge. Diversity has been super important. It's been at the utmost importance to admissions, especially in recent years. And we sort of wanted to stress that despite maybe some negative stereotypes surrounding Cambridge and diversity, the engineering community here is really welcoming and accessible for all kinds of people. So we really hope you do consider joining this community, applying to Cambridge for engineering. So just to outline what we're covering today, we're going to recap the content from the posters that you should have been sent every day for the past week so far. In the meantime, if you could keep submitting your questions to the Q&A form that we've attached to the emails, and that should also be put in the chat. We've already got some really good questions coming in, so just keep on sending them through and we'll aim to get through as many of them as possible. So the first step that we're going to talk about is choosing a college, which should be covered by Jansen.
Sorry, I didn't notice you had already switched the slides. But hi everyone, my name is Jansen, and I will be walking you through some of the factors that I think is important and what's not important when choosing a college. So if you don't already know, Cambridge is part of a collegiate system, and what that means is the university is broken down into smaller self-governing colleges. You can think of it as like the federal system of the United States. That makes sense. But basically, the university is in charge of the bigger academic matters. So, for example, your course contents, arranging your exams, and they award your degree. Your college, on the other hand, they are mostly in charge of your accommodation, your individual and pastoral care, as well as your supervisions. That is a big part of Cambridge, which I think Elisha is going to go to later. But with that being said, they still work together really closely to ensure the smooth running of the university. Um, Cambridge consists of 31 colleges in total. And even after eliminating those colleges that you are not eligible to apply to. So for example, some colleges are women and non-binary only. They are postgraduate mature colleges. So even after eliminating those colleges, you will probably still be you still end up with a long list of colleges to pick from. And there are some important factors to consider. The first one being the location of your college. I think that's really important. Central colleges, they have their pros and cons. Being located in the city center can mean that it's convenient to go to your lectures, to get groceries, etc. But because Cambridge is notoriously known as a famous tourist attraction, streets can get really congested and busy even during the weekdays. On the flip side, the more outskirt colleges like Girton or Homerton, they are more secluded. But yeah, obviously located quite far away. I do have to say that Cambridge is a very cyclable town, so if you do know how to cycle, that could be really convenient. And there are buses in Cambridge as well, though I don't take I don't take the bus often, so I don't know how reliable they are. But yes, buses do exist and could be a mode to get around too. Other than the location is obviously your accommodation. Colleges do provide different types of rooms to students. Depending on your college, some rooms are bigger, some rooms have some rooms are ensuite, bigger kitchens, smaller kitchens. They could also vary depending on availability. So some rooms are reserved for postgrads, for PhD students, for third years. So do consider that and make sure you've got that in check. These informations are usually available on the college specific websites, and they usually do have virtual tours on them as well. So do check that out. Um, um, Another thing to note is that, well, while we're on this topic, facilities are also quite important. While most colleges have similar facilities like library, dining halls, and a nice garden, some colleges have specific sports grounds like a squash court, a tennis court, while other colleges don't. So if you do want to explore those hobbies, I think you should look out for that. Uh, my final point is yes, don't focus on statistics. This is the one thing you absolutely should not be doing is to gamble your chances into Cambridge. While the acceptance rates are published online, I don't think you should use that to pick a college because of the complex. So in Cambridge, we have a pooling system, which means um, all well-qualified students will get admitted into a college, even if it's not your first choice. So basically, if you fail or if you don't manage to get into your first choice, you get put in a pool where other colleges can then choose from. So I would not suggest to use statistics. What I will advise you to do is look at the number of students per course, because that determines how big your cohort is. And if you do prefer bigger study groups, more friends to discuss certain, discuss your homework and stuff like that, that could be a point to consider. But yeah, don't stress too much on the statistics because I don't think it would increase your chances of getting in. And yes, these colleges do have open days, so be sure to check that out on the college websites as well because it varies from college to college. But yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say about colleges. Thank you.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'll be focusing on the application processes, specifically the personal statement. Um, if you're applying to, I guess, any course in Cambridge or any, I mean, through UCAS, you would have a component of the personal statement, and that's sort of the first impression that the admissions officer have of you. So it's the sort of place where you would try to show or basically condense down what you've learned and what you've what you're interested in your schooling life, and try to show how that'll help you and go forward in your course and your career for after that. And so there are a few, I guess, the main guiding questions that UCAS gives for the personal statement that you would be writing on would be as you can see here, is uh, what do you want to study? Well, like, why do you want to study the course that you're choosing? What qualifications do you have, specifically more academic side, to prepare you for the course or subject? And also, what have you done outside that helped you prepare for this course, and like how your experience has been useful? So I'll just go through each of these, just give a little bit more insight of what a personal statement would sort of look like with these sorts of questions. So focusing on the first one, oftentimes, so super like including like super curriculars and like your interest in your motivational in your motivations for applying for the course is quite important. It's sort of what sets the context for why you're really choosing the course. For me, for example, I really just was interested in medical technology, and I wanted to apply to get more experience in bioengineering specifically. I mean, I don't know specific the specializations and stuff, or like any just general which direction I wanted to go into initially, but just finding this field really interesting because I like to watch videos of like different kinds of prosthetic limbs being made and different kinds of medical devices being made, and that's just sparked an interest in me. And so I wrote about that specifically in my personal statement as well. Any sort of books, articles, and documentaries that you've seen, even if it's like movies that you can reference, it's just whatever sort of content that you like to digest that is related to your course of study in engineering, especially showing maybe even a specific area in engineering which it relates to, and why you find it interesting to you. That'll just be that'll help to set the context of your personal statement, and just and show that you're a legitimate candidate, that you're actually serious about applying to the course. And alongside that, kind of like taking things from the past as well as showing things of how your life would be in the future. So talking about your career prospects, maybe you want to join a certain industry that you really just find interesting. Maybe you're really interested in the like nuclear engineering of some sort, or want to go into aerospace engineering. And just basically, if you want to, if you've seen a certain sort of profession that you just find very fascinating and you've looked into, it'd just be nice to write about that, just so that you show that you have a sort of motivation that's core to your goal. Another thing that I would want to mention here is at the start of your essay, if you could include, or at least in sort of this question, if you can include sort of a personal story that might that might be related to your motivations, especially if it's something that you can describe in detail. If it's like, for example, I've written about a hackathon, and I was part of just to link it to sort of software engineering and stuff, and showing, I guess, the problem solving aspects of the hackathon was helped to sort of show, why I really just am interested in the course that I'm applying. And so this is sort of a technique that people have used, that because stories sort of present a personal connection with with the admissions officer, and like shows the kind of experiences that you've had. It might also link to the third question as well, but we'll get to that. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so in the second question, we focus more on the academic skills that you've developed. So in this case, highlighting the sorts of projects that you've done. So although obviously it may not be necessary that you have like a long list of projects that you've done. It's just any sort of relevant projects or any sort of relevant work that you've done to learn about a certain field, either so you've taken certain courses or tried to and build something, create, or maybe uh, pursue research in your own independent way, even if you've, for example, written an investigation report in your own school for a certain topic that you're interested in. That sort of shows that you're a certain level of sophistication in your understanding of the field and what skills would be needed, and present to the admissions officer that you have the relevant skills, or at least you can learn them like quickly as you start to gain to them. As you sorry, you can start to gain the skills that you need for getting through the course. So as it says here, it's like research, data analysis, or project management. Whether you've done any sort of job shadowing in a certain industry that you've really been interested in, or even if it's just something that's independent completely, that you've just been pursuing this sort of interest out of like a hobby that's related to engineering. I had a friend who actually, so he was just interested in bionic limbs as well, and he contacted a professor. A professor from Imperial, I believe, but basically he was able to get on a small snippet of the project, which just involved him writing a little bit of code for the bionic limb itself, and that itself like really boosted his personal statement. So even just like contacting other people who might have resources. So just finding professors, just spending time to like find professors or industry professionals who are working in the area that you're interested in, emailing them, just asking them more about maybe something that you could help in, or you could do some sort of shadowing to get some experience. Yeah, demonstrate how these align to your subject's academic requirements. I think it's so just connecting them to back to your interests and your motivations, and how why do you need these skills in engineering? For example, like why do you need problem solving? Why do you need analytical thinking? And yeah, I think that's yeah. And going to the last question, focusing more on your external activities, yeah, soft skills and hobbies. So this is sort of a way to show that you're a well-rounded candidate and you're not just focused on this specific area of engineering. Although I've been hammering on the point of trying to show that that you're really interested in this one certain field. But the best engineers in the field, I think, are the ones who are just have certain competencies outside of their own domain. So it's basically exploring certain interests that you might have that are outside of engineering, or even just something that's more, it's just out of your interest and doesn't really link directly to engineering. But being able to connect certain interests that you have, whether it's in sort of more arty subjects or more sporty, it it sort of gives it gives an impression that you're able to take on multiple different commitments and work well, and still continue, like, commit yourself to the work in like in an academic sense, which it shows the sort of balance that you can keep in your life, at least in your student life, I guess. So which is just a positive impression on your admissions officer. And just a general note on your essay, on overall trying to structure it. So being able to just make a certain point and give an example for each point that you make, and instead of trying to beat around the bush and being very straight, clear and concise about your essay, which is quite useful. As because admissions officer, they see during the time when they get all your applications, they see hundreds of applications, and maybe in a day they might review like maybe 20 to 30, and this might just be very an exhausting process. So they will have a very quick look at every single essay, and they would want to see that it's something that they want to see something eye catching, at least. That doesn't mean that you should write something that just completely, it's just completely sort of out of your league, or like above your level completely, maybe like saying that you've participated in this research project and you've published it. I mean, if you've done those sorts of projects, you should obviously write about them, but don't make up any projects, as long as you present it in a way that the admissions officer can see clear and concise structure to your essay. So just sees a flow of points and a good train of thought. It'll just be easier for them to evaluate your essay accordingly. And yeah, I think that's the main points I had for the personal statement. I'd like to hand it over to Ashi for the ESAT.
Yes, thank you, Harsh. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the engineering and science admissions test. Now, this takes place in the middle of October. So that will be, yes, October later this year. And it's actually something that your school is responsible for signing you on to. So that should be communicated to you by your school. So just double check that is the case. The ESAT is a multiple choice test, and it's got 3 sections, each are 40-minute long. The first section will always be Mathematics 1, which is compulsory, and then you choose 2 from either biology, chemistry, physics, or Mathematics 2, but that depends on the subject that you're applying for. So it's really important that you check the website for the corresponding subject that you're applying for, because that will tell you which modules are the ones you're required to do. I would double check this, but I believe last year Mathematics 2 was also required for engineering, or general engineering, I should clarify. In terms of revision, this is something that's asked a lot. How do you tackle the ESAT? It's only been around for 1 year. Last year was the first year that they did it. Before that, there was the ENGA, which was the Engineering Admissions Assessment. That's what we sat when we were in year 13. The ESAT is an online version essentially, but it is a bit different. In order to revise for the ESAT, it's quite difficult because of the fact it's only been around for 1 year. So you should have access to the paper from 2025, at least if it's not out already, it should be out in the next few months. But other than that, it would be strongly advised that you also look at past ENGA papers as well, because that will kind of give you some insight onto what the style of questions are like for the ESAT. They're not exactly the same, as I said, but it's still important to sort of practice the skills that you would require for the ENGA, such as time management being a key one, and also just the mathematical skills and the scientific skills that come with those questions in particular. It would also be strongly suggested that you look through the content that you covered in your like GCSEs and A levels so far, because that is the content that you're examined on in the ESAT. The questions are quite quick, but they do test those sort of like fundamentals that you learn in your GCSEs in the first year of A levels as well. So just make sure that you're really quite confident with sort of like the key skills that you need for maths, for example, especially considering maths is such a like a heavy part of the ESAT if you apply for general engineering. So yes, look through old maths textbooks and physics textbooks, etc., to kind of practice those questions. The style of an ESAT question is different to the style of an A-level question and a GCSE question, but you are still practicing the same sort of skills. So like I said, also look at last year's paper when that comes out to sort of compare how different they are to your GCSE and A-level questions as well. So in terms of like when you're actually sitting the exam or when you're revising the exam, what are the exam techniques that you need to be focusing on? Firstly, you need to identify key concepts and equations. It is very important that you read the question properly, because that's how you'll be able to grasp what are the concepts that they're asking you for, and ensuring that the equations that you're reading are correct. You're not just assuming things because you're under time pressure, because you just want to get on with the question as quick as you can and move to the next. So when you're revising, you want to ensure that your concepts are really like secure, and that will help you when attempting the ESAT. Another kind of like good trick, I guess, is to draw diagrams. Definitely practice this as you approach questions, because they are different for each question and it does become muscle memory eventually. But the more sort of like images you can associate with different equations or different concepts, or maybe it's drawing a diagram to help you solve a mathematical problem, that makes it so much easier for you as a student to kind of attempt these questions as well. It really does speed up the process. It might take a bit of time to get used to, but once you're used to it, then it really does speed up the process 100%, which is really important because the next technique to sort of practice is time management. As each section is only 40 minutes long, you are really pressed for time when you do the ESAT. So you need to, I believe when I did the ENGA, it was very unrealistic for me to give each question a solid attempt. And I imagine it's the same for the ESAT as well. You're very much under time pressure, and it's designed to be that way. It sort of mimics the way it's quite tense to be studying at Cambridge University. There's a lot of like time pressure on you there as well. So it is testing your ability to cope with that stress as well. So it's very important that you maintain a level head and you answer these questions as best as you can, but also practice your time management so you aren't overwhelmed when you attempt the ESAT for the first time. And definitely at first, I remember I didn't necessarily practice old papers under like a fixed amount of time. I just sort of like went with it because at least when I was at school, I didn't do that well with time pressure. But then eventually after you practice a little bit, it's very important that you do introduce a timer so you know, okay, this is how long it takes. And once you introduce that, then you practice it and you keep on practicing it until you are ready to sort of do the best you can within that period of time. You'll get more information about this sort of like test format and then other sort of support materials in May. However, you can still use the, as I said, like the ENGA past papers for revision. So there should already be some content from May 2024 that should be on the website, but you'll get even more coming up to sort of like help you practice as well. The paper from last year should be released on there as well. Yeah.
So I'll be talking about the interview process. So the overview is basically, it's a supervision kind of style interview with questions about yourself and your motivation about engineering. But it can vary from college to college depending on what they ask you and who you're being interviewed by. But the main thing is that it's basically focusing on physics, engineering, all the problems you do in GCSE, but on like a higher level because they want to test your lateral thinking skills. So expect 1 or 2 standard questions about yourself and probably about your personal statement. And then your interest in engineering. If you're looking to specialize in a certain type of engineering, they'll probably ask you more specialized questions on that. For tips for the interview, it's very scary to go inside, especially if you're going in person, to sit in a room with like an academic, but just make sure you don't panic. And they are there not to really test you. They just want to see how far you can think and like how like good your skills are in terms of problem solving. So if you panic, that'll probably like reduce your ability to do so. So make sure not to like go quiet or anything. You can say what you're thinking out loud. Even if it's not right, they're there to help you. They're not there to like ostracize you or anything like that. So they just want to see how you approach the problem. And basically to make the best out of like practicing for this, have a lot of different mock interviews with many different people. Have it with your teachers, have it with family members, have it with anyone who knows anything about engineering, and even people who don't, because the interview process is so subjective. You can't perfectly plan for it. You kind of just have to get as much practice to build your confidence for it and get into the flow of being able to talk through your mind process, talk through how you're solving a problem. And it's basically just an opportunity to show your problem solving skills. And for like the general questions, if like how passionate you are about the subject. Be prepared for questions that seem very hard on like first sight, but you can slowly work through it. So one tip from me would be look at the problem from its constituent levels, like from as simple as you can, and then build upon on it if it is a very difficult problem. But yeah, I mean, it's quite similar to like the ESAT questions I'm supposing you'd be having, or like you can just look at questions you get from like past Engas and stuff like that and see how you'd approach that. And even talking to yourself helps in practicing for it.
All right, so I'm Elisha, and wait, can we hear me to start off with? I just make sure it's live. All right, and I'll be talking through the course structure. So a bit of an intro. I'm a third year engineer, which may come up very soon. Myself and Harsh actually are third years, which are why we look a bit younger. The fourth years sadly look a bit older, but it's just how the course does it to you, man. It's peak. But you arrive your first year. There are 3 generally important things to keep in mind. One, your lectures. It's a general engineering degree, at least throughout the first 2 years. It's a 4-year degree, meaning that you will get taught basically all aspects of engineering that the department would like to cover within those 2 years. So everything from, as you can see, mechanics, structures, materials, fluids, thermo, electrical, way too much, honestly, way too much. But it is good as it allows you to get a good ground and perspective on many things. How it's supposed to work is that in the first 2 years, you learn the basics so that you can choose more so what you want to do in third and fourth year and kind of branch out. So lectures, number 1. 2, labs and coursework, very important. Kind of like supplementary to the lecture courses themselves, you'll have labs which focus on those aspects. So like if you're learning, I don't know, heat transfer, you may have a lab, generally 2 hours, but it depends, which you go in, conduct some experiments, kind of see the lecture content in practice, and then write a report and like get it graded. I think at least. It depends. In the first 2 years, you get this thing called standard credit, which is just like a savior, like genuinely a savior. It means that you write lab reports, but you're supposed to write them to a standard. It means that you don't necessarily get down. If it's terrible, they won't give you marks, I'll be honest. But it means that you don't have to put in a crazy amount of effort in order to get the accepted amount of marks. And also, once you put it to that standard, you can't get any more marks. In third and fourth year, however, you do actually get like downgraded on stuff. So it really does depend. But labs, you go in, you explore the practical sides of the theory, you write reports, you get things keep moving. Coursework is slightly different. So you'll have major courseworks, as you can see in the slides: drawing, coding, CAD, computer-aided design, structural design, and IDP, in which it may span over anything from a couple of weeks to, well, the whole year, essentially. And these are more long-running projects in which you really focus in on a certain element of engineering. These are also to be done alongside your lectures and your labs. So please, if you get in, I really hope you will get in. But if you do get in, don't stress if you haven't done the work yet. There's simply too much work. It's fine. It's a lot, but it's good because it allows you to learn more. So if I had to give one piece of advice on this, is that if you do manage to get in, please do take advantage of these courseworks because you do learn about it. And eventually, when you are looking for experience, you're looking for a placement or a summer opportunity or something like that, you can kind of call back to the courseworks and, well, hopefully it'll help. Courseworks, you also get marked standard credit in the first 2 years. Third year and fourth year, however, it's slightly different, as since not everybody's doing the same modules, it's not as standardized, essentially. So lectures, labs and coursework, and then third, as I believe it was Jansen, but I'm not too sure, mentioned earlier, there are supervisions. Supervisions are, how would I explain them? Essentially like a small focus group in which you have anywhere between 2 and 5. I will caveat this, please don't quote me, if the department or your college has organized it well, between 2 or 5. There are cases, horror stories, where more students end up in a supervision and it just gets bad. But a small group of students, one academic on the other side, and you essentially just cover the lecture content. There will normally be an examples paper, so some sort of problem sheet in which you have to solve in your own time. Yes, this is also on top of the lectures, the coursework and the labs, but still, there will be an example sheet of some sort. You complete it, you come to the supervisor, who is the academic, and you ask any questions. They ask you questions to kind of push yourself forward. And all this is in hope that 1, you leave with a better understanding of the content, and then 2, when you do the exams at the end of the year, you do well. Exams. So at the end of every academic year, which is June, May, potentially April if you're third or fourth year, there will be exams. These happen only at the end of the academic year, which is quite distinctly Cambridge, actually. I mean, I'm sure other people do it as well, but please just bear in mind, when all of your friends from other universities are like, oh, I've got exams in Jan. No, it doesn't run like that over here, sadly. You have your exams at the end of the year, all papers, all of the content. It's a massive piece of revision, but they are hard. It's part of what comes with Cambridge, and it just is how life is. After the exams at the end of the year, if you pass, hopefully we will pass, you move forward onto the next year, in which you get the additional set of modules, either if it's first or second year, you'll just simply build on that which you've learned. If it's third and fourth year, you get to pick those modules and kind of branch into whatever you want. Right. So part two, which is the third and fourth year. Part 2A, third year, you choose 10 modules, labs, and coursework are related to the modules, and you have 2 projects at the end of the year. It's actually pretty important, linking back to earlier that I said I'm a third year engineer, in that I can kind of give a bit more detail of experience on this because I'm, well, in part 2A. This means that part 2A is a bit more relaxed, I'd say, than first and second year, since things are less standardized. And I will be myself looking forward to the 2 projects which are done after exams at the end of the year. Part 2B is the fourth year content, which I'd always show Jen to maybe able to speak about if like a question comes across. You choose 8 modules and you do an individual project throughout the year, which I'm hoping isn't that hard, but like I'm yet to find out, honestly. They always look like they're crying about it, so we're gonna have to see. An important distinction, the bullet point in like the third, I can't speak English that well, but third stanza, line, whatever you call them nowadays. In the crossover between part 1 and part 2, you have to get industrial experience. This means minimum 6 weeks of some sort of internship, placement, research opportunity, so on and so forth. The department are kind of lenient, or can be, in what you do as long as it's relevant to the course or relevant to a career path in which you can get from an engineering degree. But importantly, you have to find this yourself. Now, there are placement coordinators. There may be one at your college. There is definitely one in the department. His name's Joe. He's a great guy, which can help you in terms of shaping your CV, shaping your cover letters, all of that sort of stuff. But it's very important that you make sure you're able to talk well about your experiences and then also get experiences whilst you're at Cambridge so that you do find the placement by the start of your third year, as that allows you to pass into part 2. If you do not find a placement, I don't particularly know how harsh it is, but I am been told that the department will not allow people to pass through. This can be a bit stressful. It is stressful for a lot, it's stressful for myself even, but as long as you make sure you're leaning into what experience you can, you know, joining societies, joining student teams, making sure you go over your courseworks, making sure you kind of know what the lecture content is doing, networking to the extent that you can. CUES, the Engineering Society at Cambridge, the people hosting this call, are a massive networking society. So if you're able to join, I would say it'd be nice to lean into what they can do. And then also just reaching out to those academics, professionals, any sort of help you can get that's external. I think you're putting yourself in the best position you can to get that placement. The last thing to say is that chemical engineering is a separate course with its own application process. The details can be found on the university website, but it's important to note that there is kind of a bit of leniency in regards to, I don't know, the general course structure, as even though it is a 4-year course, you may, as Arshi, I'm not sure if Arshi would like to speak about it actually, I'm kind of calling her out, but Arshi, our director of the ops team, is currently out on a year placement. So you may be able to get, like if you can find a good opportunity, a bit more leeway into what you can do with your course. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Elijah. So that kind of concludes us going through the content that you should have got on the posters. But now is the Q&A session. So we've got a lot of questions from you guys. So us on the panel will do our best to answer them where we can, and we'll get through as many as we can as well. So if we start with the first one, it's quite broad. What makes engineering so interesting? Would anyone like to start with that one?
I mean, I guess I could go. So I don't think I've spoken yet, but I'm Ansh. I'm currently a 4th year engineer studying manufacturing engineering, and I'm at Queen's College. But for me, I think what makes engineering so interesting is that the practical side of it. I think I've always really enjoyed that it's kind of maths and physics, which I've already found quite interesting, but there's always like a real world application. You can always see the impacts of what you're learning about or what you're doing. And that's something I think is very cool.
Yeah, I think what might be interesting is to kind of think about why you personally find engineering so interesting as an applicant as well, because it is such a personal thing. Some people prefer the very practical elements of it. Some people prefer the more sort of like, I don't know, readings related to it. So I think if it was a spectrum, I'm more towards like I enjoyed like reading about it before I got into it. Whereas I know people who would be making lightsabers in their garages. So it really is a spectrum of what makes you tick with engineering. And it's so broad, which is one of the things that really drew me to it as well. If you're not too sure what you want to do in the future, as long as you know you're sort of like mathematically oriented in some kind of way or scientifically oriented, the engineering course is a pretty good way to figure out what works for you. It definitely helped in my case as well. But yes, it's a very personal thing, and it's a good thing to talk about in your personal statement as well. The next question, this one's a bit of a longer one, but this person is thinking of doing a gap year or deferring their entry if they get into Cambridge engineering. Is that something that we would recommend? Because they don't know if wanting to do a gap year will affect how admissions officers look at their application. And the gap year is mainly because of financial reasons, but they've heard that for courses like maths, it isn't necessarily recommended to take a gap year. So is that the case with engineering as well?
I think I can speak a little bit. Sorry. Go
Okay, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I personally have taken 2 gap years. I don't quite think it affects admissions chances in that sense, but I think clearly communicating, I guess, the reasons of the gap year would be useful for the admissions officer. So, as you said, financial reasons, I believe that those are sort of justifiable if it really necessitates it. I mean, if there's no other option, then obviously, if you have to take a gap year, we would still like encourage you to apply because it's just admissions officers don't necessarily look at whether the student is coming straight out of school or just or they've left school for a year or two. They really just look at if you've taken a gap year, that there is an informed decision behind it, basically. Yeah, that's what I had to say. Oishi?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people who have taken gap years or intermittent and stuff, and it is possible to do, and there isn't any like you wouldn't be ostracized for doing that. But if it is for financial reasons, at least in Cambridge, we're given like bursaries and stuff, which kind of cover a lot of money like during term. So if you're on like the lower end of the financial like budgets and stuff, you can ask the university for money, and they have like a lot of grants, they have a lot of scholarships, they have a lot of bursaries that could help. So if it's just financial reasons, then there are ways to like overcome that. But if it's just for, I mean, like Harsh said, if you have like a valid reason, there's no reason for them to be like, oh, you can't take a gap year, and there's no reason for them to like for you to have a reduced chance of it.
Just to add on to what Oishi had to say about bursaries, in terms of picking a college, a lot of these colleges have different grants and bursaries that they give out to students. Some are more generous, some less generous. So do take that into consideration as well. Look out for grants from the uni and college as well. There are usually a lot of different scholarships that you can get, be it merit-based or need-based.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, I think that's one of the good things about Cambridge being such an old and, to be frank, quite wealthy university. They, especially some of the colleges, have a lot of money to give, so you can get up to thousands of pounds a year for kind of academic, sports-related stuff, if you need or if you qualify, kind of merit-based.
Oh, I remember I didn't really introduce myself. I'm Oishi and I'm a fourth year engineer. Um, I do bioengineering and mechanical engineering, and I'm from a women's college called Murray Edwards. So like kind of piggybacking off the college stuff. My college is kind of small, so the funding that is given for like bursaries is much smaller, which I know like other people at like bigger colleges are getting like a lot more money. So yeah, do take that into account when you're applying for colleges.
Perfect. So yeah, on to the next question. This person asks, how much, I think this means extracurriculars, should I do in order to make a good personal statement?
I can answer that. I think one thing about Cambridge for the interview as well, they do look at your academic skills, but they do look at how well-rounded you are as a human being. I know the sixth form I went to, they were like, they wanted students to get into Oxbridge, so they forced us to do extracurriculars that we can put on our CVs. So I would say do academic extracurriculars like I don't know, I did like maths challenges and stuff like that, and then also like sports and also like other things because your entire life isn't just engineering, it is having interests outside of that. And um, I would say it is good to have a lot of extracurriculars, but also things to do with your degree. Like, for example, if you want to do mechanical engineering, if you've done like a project by yourself over the holidays, even if it's small, you can say that you've put your time and effort into doing that because it's kind of like a hobby, but also with academic interest too. Um, or if you're into like civil engineering, you can say you went and visited a bridge and really, really liked it, you know. But yeah, I think having a lot of varied interests and also interest with your degree is helpful.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, it's not only the number that matters, but kind of the quality of what you do. And by that, I don't mean it has to be something really impressive. You don't have to win something, but just try and show that what you've done kind of links back to engineering, or show that you have a passion for engineering. And if you kind of explore it holistically and try and link it to other topics, I think that would be a really good way to show the academic side of it, and then kind of on the kind of sports and personal side, I just show what kind of person you are. I think they're really trying to just see that, I don't know, you do football, you do rugby, whatever. Um, but yeah, whatever you have, I think it'll be great.
Yeah, I think one thing that some people kind of like tend to do is sort of go overboard with the number of extracurriculars they do as well. Kind of like what Anch said about quality as well. When it comes to writing your personal statement, and also I guess with interviews, but with your personal statement, it is really important that you do mention these sort of like extracurriculars and supercurriculars that you do, but don't go overboard with it. It's not like you have to talk about every single thing that you've like possibly done in the last few years that's related to, or even like across your life that you've done that's related to engineering. I definitely didn't write about everything that I was like interested in or everything that I did when I wrote my personal statement. You kind of cherry pick like the best quality things to talk about. And it is quite possible to take one experience that might not be that related to engineering and sort of shape it in a way that it becomes related to the subject, and you can put that in your personal statement. Like there is flexibility with it, and you don't want your personal statement to look like everyone else's as well, so it is a very unique thing. So with extracurriculars, don't go crazy with it, don't stress yourself out over it. You also need to focus on your exams, like your A levels. That's very important. So yeah, don't go crazy with that. And another question sort of related to what we were talking about. As many more people become aware of supercurriculars, would you say that its value has decreased?
I think definitely not. I think supercurriculars are a way for you to show that you're interested in engineering, and kind of a way for you to demonstrate that you're taking your interests beyond the rigid A-level courses you're given, which is something that's really, really important at university. So I think, although Ashi has kind of mentioned about trying to stand out a bit, supercurriculars just themselves help you stand out, no matter how many people are writing about them. And inherently, every experience will be unique because rather than just talk about what you did, if you try and focus a bit more about what you learned or what you enjoyed, and kind of link that back to your studies or kind of another thing you've seen, I think that could be really valuable. And that's going to be something that differentiates you from other people who have just written down like 3 things they did, but not kind of what they've learned from that or what they enjoyed most about that in an engineering context.
Cool. If no one's got anything else to add to that one, how do supervisors typically tailor supervision to different learning styles? And what should students do if they feel like they aren't getting the most out of them? Just a good question. And I think it really depends on the quality of your supervisor as well, because there are a few that won't tailor their supervision style to you. And I think the older you get, like the further through the course you get as well, you have less of a personal relationship with your supervisor because it's organized by the department rather than by your college. Whereas in the first 2 years, it is organized by your college. So you'll be with students in your college as well in the supervisions. So you kind of build that relationship with them. But in terms of tailoring it to different learning styles, the thing that you can do as a student is just keep asking questions. That's what supervision is for. So the more questions you ask, the more you can drive the supervision in the direction that most suits you. And I know for a fact, like I was quite shy going into it in first year. I didn't really know what kinds of questions to ask, but then with time, and you sort of have to persevere personally as well, you just keep asking more questions. And yes, sometimes you do sound a bit silly for not knowing something, but most of the time supervisors will take it quite well, and because they are experts in their field, so they know what they're talking about most of the time. So they can just give you as much information as you need. They kind of don't know where you stand relative to them. So the way to do that is just keep asking questions, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
To oh
You can go ahead.
To add on to that, if you are really, really struggling with your supervisions, like say you don't know anything that's going on, and going to supervisions also doesn't help you, you get a director of studies, so it's kind of like your academic tutor, and you can talk to them and ask them for one-to-one supervisions. Because if you're really struggling, again, like at the end of the day, they just want to help you. So if you're really struggling, you can ask for one-to-one supervisions, and that would be something that is more tailored towards you because it's just you and the supervisor, and you can talk about whatever you want. On top of that, you can also just, if you have some more specific questions, most lecturers are quite happy to help. So if you just go up to them afterwards, you can ask them if you have any specific questions. And also because you're in a group of people, most people will tend to learn from each other. So if there's someone else in the group who's more suited to your learning style, you guys can work together and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I guess, like adding to like talking to the people in your course as well. Just I find like many of us have different sort of set of specializations, and like, some things that we've all explored individually, and like we can explain a concept to each other if we really just don't understand it. The other thing is there's a great resource called the internet that I think everyone has access to, which I believe that honestly, especially for engineering or any sort of technical field, I believe there's so many resources out there, especially on YouTube, on in terms of books, even recommended reading that professors provide, or even like AI, for example, that can give a lot more direction for like understanding certain concepts and stuff. So there is honestly a lot of resources for like available to you just generally to understand any concept.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. The next question is, what do you look for in a student who shows potential to thrive rather than just survive the high pressure workload? It's quite philosophical.
I think that's probably quite personal to everyone. But for me, I think it was that at least while you're in the middle of term. So term's only 8 weeks, which is I think one of the shortest. So Oxbridge has only 8 week long terms. My view is that it's very hard to be a perfectionist or kind of try and get to 100% on everything. If you, well, this is not to say like lectures, try and attend all of your lectures and so on, but if you put in kind of like 80 or 90% of the work, and I think that's genuinely enough during term time. Part of the reason the holidays are so long is because you're meant to have time to kind of consolidate and catch up. But that's kind of a method in order to keep on track with academics, but also have time to kind of socialize and do extracurriculars, which I think also really important.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I guess as a student, probably if you have, say, multiple extracurricular activities that you've been doing, obviously not to say like to branch out and do all possible extracurricular activities, but just getting involved in a few different ones and balancing that along with your workload is a good indicator to someone evaluating application to see, you know, they've been able to take on this much workload and like been able to produce some good results as well in each of these fields. For example, if you're really into sports, then you've made it to the team for the school team. That obviously shows some commitment to the role, as well as if your academics are good, then it just shows that you can handle like the high pressure of like different commitments that you might have.
Cool, thanks, guys. The next question is, in your interviews, do you prioritize a student's current knowledge or their capacity to absorb new information in real time?
I could answer that a bit. I think I would say it's a bit tough because it's a bit of both. I think it's definitely more your ability to absorb information. So I think your current knowledge, there has to be a baseline, like, you know, kind of basic A-level maths, basic GCSE maths and physics. But beyond that, the interview questions are really different from A-level questions. They're really trying to test how well you work on an unfamiliar problem. Um, and that's why it's most often a question you can't immediately answer, or you can't immediately see the method to answer. They might not give you new information necessarily, but it'll be a new style of problem, and that's what they're really trying to see, how well you can kind of think and work on that problem with the supervisor or your interviewer in this case.
Yeah, I think like a personal anecdote, in one of my interviews, there was actually, well, maybe a miscommunication in that the interviewer had assumed that I'd covered a bit of content in my A levels I hadn't yet. So I think it was gravitational fields I hadn't yet covered in physics. So he asked me a question on it, and I was trying to apply what I knew about, I think, magnetic fields, but I was still like, I'm not sure, I haven't actually done this yet at school. And he was like, oh, that's okay. And then he proceeded to sort of explain it to me, but also like maybe ask a couple questions in the middle, try to probe me, get me to think about how to approach the question. And I didn't get everything right. But he did want to see the way that I think and the way I would absorb new information. So I think it is very important to sort of be able to highlight that skill as well. And the last, well, another question is, do you have to take physics to take engineering at Cambridge? I'd say pretty much yes. I definitely took physics. I think everyone I know took physics as well. I think it was actually a requirement to do maths, physics, and then you could pick the other subjects. You could be more flexible. Further maths is very strongly suggested, though not necessarily. Like, I do know people who didn't take further maths and got in, but proportionally it's a lot more people who took further maths, and it does sort of benefit you a lot. But in terms of physics, I mean, I don't know if you guys know any exceptions, but everyone I know took physics. No. Okay.
I think you do, like, physics and maths are like the requirements. I'm not sure. I think further math is now also a requirement. But if not, it is quite a step up to go from regular maths to engineering here. But yeah, I think physics is a definite requirement.
Yeah.
I think some schools don't teach further maths. So further maths is not necessarily required. knowing it will make your first term a lot easier. But at least my college, they kind of grouped together people who didn't do further maths in supervision groups. So I guess their supervisions were a bit more tailored to helping them catch up. But physics, yeah, will probably be required.
This next question is a bit longer. It's saying that on one of the posters that we sent out earlier this week about writing a personal statement, it mentioned that an applicant would be expected to have completed a personal project by the time that they should be applying. This person initially interpreted this as designing a model rocket and analysing its thrust curve or something like that. Many may not have the resources or equipment to complete such intricate personal projects. So what projects do Cambridge admission officers genuinely value, and may the standard inadvertently favour applicants from more resourced backgrounds? Which is a good question. I think to start that one off, I would say in this question you've said a personal project. I think it really depends because in the poster, I don't think we specified that it had to be a personal project or anything. I just think project work in general, like I did a bunch of group projects through school, that really helped as well. So sometimes your schools, like I didn't go to a private school, went to a state school. Your schools might have sort of opportunities that you can look at for projects as well, so you don't have to personally fund anything. So that's sort of one avenue I would look at. I'm not sure if you guys did personal projects at all.
Yeah, I'd maybe like to add to that. Not everybody needs to be that cracked. I think it will basically always favor people from more resource backgrounds simply because that is how life is. Like there's not too much you can do. If you've got better resources, you've probably got access to better students, you've probably got access to Cambridge and Oxford tutors or tutors themselves, and you may simply do better. However, in terms of projects, I think it's important to note that it doesn't necessarily have to be a strictly like practical or building engineering projects. There are stuff nowadays which are free, whether it's softwares like CAD or like software like code itself in terms of like Python or websites or any sort of thing like that, in which you can definitely get your hands on, maybe just watch a few YouTube videos or tutorials. And it doesn't always have to be exactly in line with what you view or why you're interested in the course. But if you can kind of find a way to link it still and maybe talk about, I don't know, how like you've learned this particular thing and you think it may be able to apply, or how you kind of like see that there are courseworks at Cambridge. I mean, we may not have to speak on Cambridge specifically, but if you're doing an engineering degree at a university, there will always be coursework and there will always be something to be learned. That means that you can transfer that skill to learn to it. So yes, people will be favored if they have more resources because that's how it's not supposed to be. Don't quote me before I get in like a massive amount of trouble. But at the same time, in your projects, it doesn't have to be something which requires a ton of resources. And you can just find something which is base level, which you know you can kind of convert towards an interest towards that particular field, and which doesn't have to, well, what's the crazy amount?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm not sure if this person was here. I think when I mentioned projects earlier, but it's more about they're looking for you to show your initiative and kind of your passion or interest in engineering outside of curriculars. If you built a rocket, that's great, but it doesn't have to be anything crazy like that. I mean, we mentioned kind of doing free things online. It could be even reading around a topic, kind of just talking about something that interested you and how you explore that further by yourself.
Yeah, adding on to that, it's not really about how extravagant your project is. I for myself, I was a lockdown baby, so I didn't have chances to do much at all. But to like complement that, you could just do like a lot of reading. As long as you're like interested in engineering and you show that interest through what you've done, whether that's a project, a big project or a small project, or even like reading research papers or reading or just being up to date on like whatever topic you're interested in, that is what they're looking for. They're looking for like passion, and it's not necessarily how much resource. Like, of course, it's good if you have a well-built project. But if you can't, for whatever reason, because of lack of resource, if you're able to show that in some other type of way, you're interested in engineering, then that's okay.
Yeah, I think anecdotally, I mean, sorry, it might be taking too long, but like I just like to quickly add, the universities are aware that people do have more resources, and I'm not saying projects like that aren't great, but I think it wasn't in Cambridge. I think it's probably Imperial. One of my interviewers actually asked me a question about a thing I did. They were like, "Did you do this yourself, or is this something that the school organized?" In that case, I had done it myself, but they are really looking out for people who kind of had these handed to them versus anything that you take initiative on is really valuable for the university because it just shows your genuine interest and that you're going the extra step, no matter how kind of amazing it is.
Oh, thank you. This person asks, how intense would you say the degree is, and is it manageable based on time in lectures and time spent studying?
I
I
mean,
think
honestly speaking, it is very, very difficult. But it does get better through the years. I think first year is like everything is standard credit, like Elisha mentioned, so you don't have to really try hard on all your projects and stuff. Um, and then second year it does get more intense second and third year, but then when you get to fourth year, because you've like specialized to as much as you can, you're like very interested in it, so it doesn't feel like that much. However, it is comparatively to other universities, it is a lot more workload. But it is manageable if you are an organized person. A lot of the times, I myself, I'm not that organized. It does get difficult to juggle things around, but there are really big holidays because our terms are so short. It's only 8 weeks compared to like 12 weeks elsewhere. If you do fall behind in something, there is always a chance to catch up in the holidays. Obviously, don't try not to do that, but it's not the end of the world if you are struggling with speed and stuff. It's not like everyone gets everything done. There's also extensions you can take for projects. They're quite generous with the extensions you can take. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing also that sort of like links to this question is different people also might have different requirements. Like certain people might require extra time or may require to receive sort of like PowerPoints and lectures in advance or have them recorded. I believe general engineering lectures are recorded anyway for the most part. But in terms of like other special requirements that people may need, there's the ADRC, which is the Access and Disability Resource Centre, I believe, in Cambridge, and they are sort of like responsible for ensuring that between you and the department and your college, everything is sort of like smooth in terms of the requirements that you have, whether that is extra time, for example, because it does make a big difference and it does sort of help you manage at an environment like Cambridge, which is very high pressure for like the average person as well. So yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of and to think about from first year itself. If you think you do sort of require different things than the average student, then do look into what the ADRC can offer you as well and help you manage the situation. Another thing is you do have a tutor, which is different. The name is misleading because it's not a tutor in the sense they are tutoring you on a subject. But when you are matriculated into the college in first year itself, you are given a tutor who oversees your well-being. So this will be a fellow, probably supervises a different subject in your college. So mine is a biology professor, but this tutor is sort of responsible for the like non-academic side of you, and whilst they might not always be able to fulfill all your needs in terms of like if you require emotional support for something or if things are getting really tough, they are still a person to turn to that you can talk to and sort of know where to go next from there. But yeah, does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's intense and it can get difficult at times, but it is manageable and everyone's in the same boat. So the professors know it, the students know it. So it's like there's always help available if you need. And also that's why first year doesn't count towards your final mark, because it is pretty much a practice run for you to get your feet. And by the time second year rolls around, you kind of have a grip on how things work.
Cool. So the next question is for someone considering both engineering and NatSci. What are the benefits of a more hands-on course, and are there options to study academic science to a deeper level within engineering?
Oh, my mic's been on this entire time. My bad. For I feel like for Natsuki, it does go more into depth for academic sciences and stuff. There are benefits for either, depending on what you want to do in the future. If you want to do something that's more research and more like you want to be in the lab, you want to be doing something heavily research based, I would say go for Natsuki, because for engineering it is more hands-on, it is more on like industrial kind of work and stuff like that. That being said, I'm doing bioengineering right now, and a lot of my stuff now has turned into research because I'm working with a PhD supervisor who his main focus is research. But until like your third and fourth year, you don't really, or not until third year, until your fourth year, you don't really go into heavily research kind of like topics. I think everything else is quite like hands-on, quite generic, not generic, but like it doesn't go too into depth like you would in NatSci, for example. That being said, the examinations for engineering and NatSci, I would say they're on different similar levels, but for the exam papers we do and the example papers we do for engineering, we get answer sheets with them, so like where you've gone wrong and stuff like that. But I know for like physics and for biology and stuff like that, they all of their like answers and stuff is heavily reliant on supervisions because there's no like answer sheet. There's no like standardized answer sheet to like go through and stuff like that. But I would say it really depends on what you want to do in the future. And if you're not sure, there is also a chance to switch. I would not recommend this, but if you are really like not enjoying NASCII, or if you're not really enjoying engineering and you're like, oh, I'm more suited towards one or the other, you can switch a year in telling your supervisor like, oh, this is not for me. I think you might have to do another re-interview for the subject you want to do, but it is an option as a fail-safe.
Cool, thank you. The next question asks how much coding and how much CAD is needed for the course, and also can you take a year in industry? Yeah, I could probably talk about this one. Coding and CAD are definitely not a requirement going into the course. Yeah, because everyone's sort of experience with engineering is very like independent of each other. It's very unique. So some people are more interested in CAD, so they probably have done a course on it, or similar with coding as well. And it definitely can help, especially with the coursework, but it's not a requirement by any means. I think I had virtually no coding experience and very limited CAD experience going into the degree, but we do get taught how to do them within first year and second year a bit as well. And even in third year, I had a sort of project on CAD where they were still kind of like teaching us how to do it as well. So you don't need like you're not required to know a lot about it before going into it. But in terms of when you actually do the course and you're undertaking it, there are projects that do require you to code and to CAD as well. The CAD one's quite fun. It's about a roller coaster. And the next one was, can you take a year in industry? Yes, that's what I'm doing right now. You can apply to intermit, which is an intermission is when you take a year out of your studies, and that can be for personal reasons or it can be for industrial experience as well, which is what I'm doing. And they are usually quite willing to do that as long as you're spending pretty much the whole year kind of working on a project or like with a company, and you've got proof of it as well, then they're happy for you to do that for sure. Does anyone have anything to add about that?
I would say it's not necessary to have CAD or I can't open Teams. It's not necessary to have CAD or coding experience. However, I would say it's very useful. I also didn't have any coding experience, and to be honest, to this day, I don't think I can code that well. So if you are in the opportunity to code, then I would say go for it. It's obviously better to know things than have to be taught it through Cambridge. They will teach you, but it is because everything's going on at once, it's kind of hard to keep up. So, and obviously, if you want to take part in like societies that have bigger projects and stuff like that, they require you to have a bit more coding knowledge that you get from just the base level you get from our courses. For CAD, I would say the CAD that they do in the intro for first year, it covers the basics, but if you want to do something that's more technical and stuff like that, you end up needing to learn more CAD anyway. I think what we use right now in department is SolidWorks, but in industry, people use AutoCAD, people use I'm using Onshape right now. There are multiple different CAD softwares. So if you have the time and you're willing to and you want to, getting to know CAD on multiple softwares is useful. It's not necessary, but it's useful. And if you want to do bigger projects by yourself, for example, you might want to have more practice.
This person wants to pursue a career in aerospace, and for that they would want to do aerospace engineering at university. So they're asking, how much value does holding a private pilot license add to their application? It's pretty cool. Not sure if any of you know the answer to that question.
I mean, you'll definitely stand out because I don't think the majority of 16, 17, 18-year-olds have a private pilot application. I mean, license, sorry. So good for you if you do.
I think we probably wouldn't know the answer to that specific question, but I think it would definitely help show your interest. But I think something more directly engineering related would link to that would be kind of amazing. So if you could kind of take that take your interest from your pilot's license and potentially link it to, I guess, learning more about the physics or engineering of airplanes, that would be kind of I don't think anyone else would have that really.
Yeah, and I think more than just the pilot's license, I feel like just maybe an experience with flying or just like experience learning about flight and stuff would carry more towards that than just like saying that you have a pilot's license. So if, for example, you're mentioning in your personal statement or like you're talking about it in your interview, mentioning the work that you've actually done could show a little bit more of that interest, I guess, in aerospace engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing I'd say, which isn't exactly what this person asked, but if you are very keen on studying aerospace engineering, I would sort of, again, look at the course structure that we offer at Cambridge, because it is general engineering for 2 years and then you specialize. And even when you specialize, you pick the modules yourself out of like a selection of 50 or so modules. So it's not going to be quite tailored the way an aerospace degree at another university maybe. But that being said, doing the general engineering course definitely has a lot of benefits. It makes you so well-rounded as an engineer, but it depends on what you are personally looking for as well. So I would say maybe you look into that again, not again, but as you sort of look at universities, sort of evaluate if you'd rather do aerospace or general, like what sort of aligns for you. Because I think I applied to both, aerospace and general. But when I applied, I wasn't completely sure about aerospace. I was like thinking that's what I want to do. And now I do manufacturing, which isn't aerospace at all. So yeah, it really just depends on you as well. There are two kind of questions here. about entry requirements. One is saying, do the minimum entry requirements change if I have a lot of relevant work experience and certificates in other related activities in physics and maths? And the next one is asking if you really need 4 A levels, including further maths for engineering, because it's not always seen as a separate subject or A level, or is 3 enough?
I can answer the second half of the question. I think 3 is enough. I did 3, so unless they've changed the rules, but I'm quite sure further maths and physics are okay. But a lot of people do 4. I don't think it matters too much. It kind of doesn't affect your application as long as you get the required grades for all of them. But yeah.
I would say it does depend potentially on college. So if there are requirements on their websites, take a look, because I think they mentioned that maths and further maths can be sometimes required quite similar, which it was for my case. So I applied to Queen's, and my A level offer requirements were specified for further maths, physics, and chemistry. They didn't really care about maths because they were like, if I can do further maths, I can probably do maths. So I could have got a D in maths for all they care. But I would say yes, 3 is enough. Further maths is fine. But do check colleges. Some are a bit more strict than others.
Yeah, for me it was similar in that Selwyn actually changed my requirements, or like increased them to A stars in further maths and physics, and then A's in maths and chemistry. So again, they sort of assumed that if you're going to get an A star in further maths, you should be getting one in maths as well. So I would say it depends on the person, because I do know a lot of people who did 3 A levels and are doing the same course as me. But if I was pulled, and I think doing 4 subjects did kind of benefit me in that way. I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I think the fact that I did have a 4th one maybe strengthened my application because it was added to my requirements for my grades as well.
What was the first part of that question? Well, the first question is something to do with lots of work experiences, I think, right? I think
Yes, yeah.
if it's, I would be wary to kind of say that you can replace A levels with that. I would say it would definitely help a lot with your application if you've got kind of work experiences related to physics, maths, or engineering. But the universities also want to see that you can do 3 A levels at the same time. And you will need the basic A levels of at least maths and physics. But yeah, no definitive answer there, but I think they will help your application, but can't really replace an A level.
Cool. This person's asking, how important are predicted grades realistically?
I think I would say somewhat important, in that the universities do take a look at them. And I guess some schools are known to be quite accurate in their predicted grades. But to caveat that, I would say if you feel your teachers haven't given you predicted grades that kind of accurately reflect what you're capable of, I would say don't worry, because Cambridge does interview 80% of their applicants, or kind of thereabouts. So if you're close and you've got a good personal statement and a decent ESAT score, I think you'll be more than fine. And kind of once you've got to the interview, your interview and kind of ESAT score will be the kind of main weight of the offer decision, because that's the thing the university has actually seen for sure. Whereas predicted grades could kind of be over or underinflated completely depending on kind of which school or teacher you get.
Cool. This person's asking, how much hands-on work do you get to do? I'm happy to take that question as well. But I would say, especially in first and second year, I know this was kind of covered when we talked about course structure, but it can be very hands-on, especially the bigger projects. So in first year, you've got a structural design project where you're building a structure in pairs, and you're literally in the workshop for a week, doing that for a couple hours every day, and it's really fun. Definitely, I think not everyone, but most people do prefer the sort of hands-on work that we do. Similarly, in second year, there's a bigger project, IDP, which we talked about earlier, and that's designing like a little car, essentially a little vehicle to follow a track around it's like a course sort of with some obstacles in the way. And it's harder than it sounds, to be honest. But you do that in groups, and that is also very hands-on. It takes about 4 weeks, I think, as well. You do that alongside your lectures. I don't think you have supervisions that time of year. In that period. But you do still have to keep on top of lectures. So yes, there is a good amount of hands-on work, but you are sort of multitasking that alongside your lectures and your supervisions, and if you're doing things outside of the course as well. Yes, it does get quite chaotic, but you get a mix of theoretical things and hands-on things as well. Not sure if anyone has anything else to add to that. This person asked, is there a uni gym? Yes, there is a uni gym. There's also college gyms as well.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that.
Yeah. The uni gym is in West Cambridge. So if that's really important to you, I would suggest looking at colleges that are called hill colleges. They're sort of closer to West Cambridge. Again, so look at the map and see what your priorities are in terms of location. I think we'll do maybe 5 more minutes of questions. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. Is there uni sport like rugby? Yes, there is. Just next to Selwyn College, actually, you've got the uni rugby field. So there's lots of sports available. You can look online. I think there's a website that actually lists all the CAM uni societies and sports as well. So I'd recommend looking at that. The next one's how much free time do you get?
I can sort of take this one. I guess it really depends on how organized you are, but I would say I'm definitely able to squeeze out like a total of maybe 20 to 30 hours a week. That's a little bit generous maybe, but it depends from time to time, because like during early term time, like that's when things start to pick up again, and like when more supervision starts, so there's more free time. But during the middle of term, it's usually very, very busy, so I usually don't have any free time at all. But it also depends on how many commitments you have. So I'm sort of not including other societies that you might join during that time.
Well, thank you. This person's asking, are there any technological requirements that I will need for an engineering course that can help me buy a suitable laptop that lasts me from the start of year 12 to the end of a 4-year course, with respects to whether I need designing software or anything similar? I think of when I was in first year, I remember that people who had Macs sort of struggled a little bit with downloading certain softwares, whereas I had like a HP and that was completely fine. I'm not sure if that's changed since then, but I think especially SolidWorks, which is the CAD software that we use, it was a bit difficult, or you had to go down a more complicated route if you had a Mac. I'm not sure if you guys have any recommendations, maybe for a suitable laptop as well.
Yeah, I think for engineering, Windows is typically more suited. And if you have like a decently powered laptop, maybe like 16 gigabytes of RAM and kind of decent processor, like an i5 or equivalent. But I would say don't worry about it too much if you can't get hold of one. or if you just want to use your old one, because the university does have like very powerful desktops in the engineering department, which you can access pretty much all the time. It's just a bit more inconvenient. You have to go there. So if you can't download the softwares, you can do it within the engineering department.
This person asks, do you have any recommendations for engineering-focused work experience? The options they've come across so far are quite generic and they want to find something more targeted. So I can give this one a go. I mean, when we applied, at least most of us, it was during the COVID sort of time frame. So a lot of them were maybe online work experience opportunities. In terms of options to that are quite like generic versus more specialized, I think you sort of should look at the fields that interest you as an individual and apply from there. I think I found one in the automotive sector, but it was more of an opportunity to look at if you were interested in an apprenticeship. So I kind of got work experience through that way. I wouldn't say work experience is necessarily mandatory though, because it is useful and it does help you as an individual sort of see what you're interested in, but there are many other ways that you can look at what to look at expressing how you're interested in the subject as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think. Sorry, we can move on.
No, go on.
I'd say I don't think work experience is necessary at all. But yeah, as Archie said, look into the sector. So like civil companies such as Jacobs or Atkins often have work experiences, or kind of within aerospace, something like Airbus. But yeah, just kind of dig around. There's not that many for kind of A-level students, but there are some, and you don't need them. If you can get them, they could be good.
Cool. I think we have time for maybe one last question. So we are almost at the end of the list of questions anyway, but this one's asking, what kinds of practice are most effective for developing interview style thinking?
I think I would say definitely practicing hard questions out loud with someone. So the first one is you want to practice the interview style questions, which are very different to kind of A-level questions you normally come across. I think there's a few good websites for this. I know I want to study engineering.com or .org has some really good questions on there. It was made by some Cambridge professors. But yeah, critically, they're very hard to solve immediately. So they will use the same concepts that you come across in A levels, but in a very unique way. And then I think the second part, which is almost as important, is to practice out loud, either with kind of a friend, a teacher, a parent, anyone who's willing to kind of ask that question to you and give you hints where necessary, for two reasons. The first is you want to practice giving your thoughts out loud in kind of a structured way so that the supervisor or interviewer can understand what you're talking about, understand the way you're going down, especially because not only do they want to see how you think, but also so they can help you if you get stuck. And the second part is if you do get stuck, or if you can't figure your way out, you do need someone to give you hints. You don't want to look at the answer to the question, but it's very likely in an interview you're going to get hints from your interviewer. So you want someone to kind of simulate that experience so you can get experience, or so you can kind of get used to it.
Perfect, thank you. I know I said that was the last question, but I found one more that is a little bit different to what we've talked about so far, and that's asking, what are the options for studying abroad and how does a course integrate it? I think it has evolved a little bit since we were in first year, but there definitely are opportunities to study abroad. I would definitely recommend looking at the website for that though, because I think most people choose to stay in Cambridge for the duration of your degree because it does fly by, to be honest. But you can do a year abroad. I believe it's in Singapore. I think there used to be one in the States, but I don't think that's around anymore. If it is really important for you though to do a year abroad, I would look at the website and just make sure that the options available suit you as well. And then you'd come back for 4th year. But go on.
There's 2, I think, currently. There's one in Singapore with NUS and one in Paris with Central Superlek. I butchered that pronunciation. But there's 2 you can do. Very few people do it. Maybe about 5 in a year. Most people stay in Cambridge, but if you do want to study abroad, it's a very exciting opportunity.
No, 100%. It would for sure sort of broaden your horizons a bit doing a year in a different country. But yeah, that concludes the Q&A session and hence concludes today's webinar. Thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. There were a lot of really interesting ones in there. We tried to answer as many as we could. Some sort of like asked about the same thing. If you have any really pressing questions, we'll leave the forum open, I think, for another until the end of the week, and we can try, if there are any like really key questions, we can try communicate that information back to you via email. We'll send out that information to everyone as well. There is still more to enjoy this week as well, so do keep looking at your emails every day. But thank you for coming to today's webinar. Thank you for coming to Access Week as well. We hope this has benefited you and given you more insight into Cambridge engineering as well. Yeah, thanks guys for coming, and thank you to CUES committee for joining me today as well.
No, thank you for everyone for coming, and definitely do apply.